That way other people can see it. They want.
Hey, Antonia.
Yes.
Just so you know, I'm here on my phone because my computer is not wanting to cooperate with me at all.
Okay.
I've been trying for an hour to get it to work so that I can like pull up the budget and talk about stuff. So I'm going to keep working on it. Hopefully I will be able to, you know, actually present with information and things. But yeah, that's where I am right now.
Okay, no problem. Not a problem. Hey, Brianna, I just made you a co-host. When I'm presenting, I won't be able to see if people are trying to get into the meeting. And if you could help by admitting people, that would be awesome. It should be over. I usually open the chat or something, or it might be at the top.
Down. Side.
Antonia,
Yes.
I just sent you the presentation slides. I've never presented in Zoom, so and I don't see that I have the ability to do that.
Okay.
So I thought I'd send it to you.
Okay, that's fine. I probably have to make you a co-host or something for you to do that.
I haven't had to learn how to do it in Zoom, so I'll just use Google Meets when I need to, but either, you know, I can try to figure it out if you want.
No, it's fine. Not a problem. Okay, welcome everybody. It's 7:02, so we're gonna get started. I'm Antonia Maurer, president, this year's president of the PTA, and I'm really glad everyone's here, and I'm sure we'll be getting lots more kind of as people start trickling in, because we have a very important meeting tonight with Denise on. So the first thing I want to do, I'm actually going to share my screen with you. I have a little bit of a slideshow thing. Hold on. Just to make it easier to know what I am doing. I need to make this into an actual, it's been a while since I've done any of this, so present, there we go. Okay, great. All right, first PTA meeting, general meeting of the year. So I'm glad you all are here. It will be, there's not a lot on the agenda, but there's a lot on the agenda tonight. So first, Steve Cooper with Southeast Portland Girls Basketball Club is just going to give us a little thing about that. And then I'm gonna do a little PTA overview and some committee updates. And then we do need to look at the budget tonight because the PTA members need to vote on our budget for this year. And then we will have quite a bit of time for Principal Denise. That one says 45 minutes. I didn't realize it said that. It'll probably be a little bit less, but that's okay. We can go over too if we need to, because I know it's really important. There's a lot of really good questions people had tonight for Principal Denise. So first, Steve, if you want to take it away real quick about the Southeast Portland Girls Basketball Club. This is all the information you sent me. Sure. And I will be sending out the flyers on Constella later this week, so everyone can get all this information then as well.
That's perfect. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for allowing.
You gotta acknowledge Daddy.
Hold on, we gotta make sure everyone's on mute. Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
I didn't do anything wrong, right?
No, you're good. You're good.
I hate doing these kind of things because I never know what I'm doing. Anyway, in terms of Zoom, But anyway, again, my name is Steve Cooper, and I'm the director of Southeast Portland Girls Basketball Club. It is a volunteer nonprofit Oregon corporation. And our whole goal is to organize girls basketball teams by school. And at Grout, in our last season, which would have been 2019-20, right before COVID, we had 27 teams across Southeast Portland. Many of them were school-based teams. And at Grout, we had 18 players. It's been, for whatever reason, it had been difficult to recruit kids to play. The year before, we had 1 player, and now we have 18 players. And we have 1 team there that's a 5th grade team now, run by a Grout parent by the name of Cal Bartol. Christine, who is your IDEA chair, I think, her daughter plays as well. So we've got a lot of kids from Grout, and all we want to do was figure out how we can get information to parents to get the word out that we are putting school-based teams together, and they become club teams. Our club has been very, very successful. We take any girl who wants to play, regardless of family economic issues. We don't do tryouts, and I'm very, very competitive, but I don't believe it in tryouts at youth level, only because kids change so dramatically, as you all know. So we had 2 years ago a partnership with the Sun program at Grout. We have it again this year, and they will help us get information out so that we can form teams at Grout. And we're looking for that same relationship from PTA. But this is a great program. It's year-round. We run camps, we run clinics, we do open gyms, and it's exceedingly affordable. And we haven't raised our rates in, I think, 3 or 4 years. And there are some economic challenges now with changes coming from Portland Public Schools and Portland Parks. We're still not going to raise any of the fees that we charge. But it's a great program. If you have daughters who would like to play basketball, please call me. And I'd love to talk to you. We're doing an event starting this Sunday at Multnomah University, which is a ball handling and shooting clinic, and is run by some of the women players from the Multnomah University team. And it'll be an incredible program. It's every Sunday for an hour and a half. But we'd love to be able to put teams together there at Grout. Most of the kids that we have now there are older, particularly Cal's team. They're 5th graders, so they'll be gone. So we're really focused in adding 1st grade, 2nd grade, and above. And we're the only team organization around that does something for 1st and 2nd grade. So we have a development program for that. So that's our club. That's what we're doing. I appreciate being here. We're looking for as much help as we can get from PTA. Anything that we can do to help you would be great. And we've got emails and stuff going out to principals, staff, teachers, all in the next week about what we're doing there. So with that, that's my 5 minutes. I hope I didn't go over.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and as it says, there is additional, I will be sending out the flyer that Steve sent me on Constella. And Denise, it sounds like you'll be getting probably a flyer as well.
That's great. I have a question for you, Steve, because I'm not sure with the CUB office that they're approving building use at this point. So do you have a different location for practice, or were you planning to use?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of different things on that situation. You're right about the PPS thing. They're not taking any public registrations for gym space until December 31st. So one of the things that's important, particularly for Grout, is because of our relationship with Sun, We are getting Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 7 at Sun or through Sun. And we're doing the same thing at Arleta, where we have the same arrangement. And then we're looking for private space, but private space is really, really expensive. And we'll just raise money for it. But yeah, so we're pulling our hair out, Denise, about that issue, but we're very familiar with it for sure.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, and then also if anyone can't find any other information, you're always welcome to email groutpta@gmail.com and we can get you connected with Steve also. So
Or they can just call me. Just you can hand
or
out
call.
my phone number.
Yeah, your phone number is on
Hand
the
out my phone
slide.
number.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm
Mhm.
gonna go eat dinner now. So
Awesome.
have a great meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to the PTA overview. I just need to know, can you guys see my, just because I've never done this before, but I have like on my side all the pictures of people. Can you guys see that at all? Or you're just seeing the slides? Okay,
Just the
perfect.
slide.
Just slides. Perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure what you guys can see. Okay, so we are the PTA, Parent Teacher Association for Grout. And this year, my goals are for the PTA to help the parents and guardians connect and collaborate to help amplify and involve Grout school community members that have traditionally not been part of PTA, and also to help Grout school community reconnect after over a year away from classrooms. So we have a few things that we're doing right now to work towards those goals. For instance, we have our idea committee that hopefully Christine will be on and talk about. And we're also going to be getting Grout t-shirts for all Grout students this year. And there's a design contest happening right now. Hopefully you all received home today the design submission form from your student's teacher. So we're hoping that we can get a really cool design from one of the students. So those are the things we're doing right this minute. There's a lot of stuff we can't do right now. Obviously because of COVID, we can't do any in-person events, but hopefully that'll change eventually. So okay. I'm just reading people's little chatty chats. Okay. Go back. Okay. So why do you want to join the PTA? Why do you want to be part of PTA? There's lots of reasons. We do have a really great board this year, but we always can use more help. If there's something that you are super passionate about, we would be happy to help you be passionate about it with us. We also have some people who have been on the board a really long time, and it would be great to get some new people in to kind of help out, but also so that we can get more voices involved, because we're really interested in making sure that we're hearing from everyone in the Grout community. So I'm the president, Antonia. We also have a vice president, Kim, and she also is doing the clothing swap, which is not going to happen this year, obviously, because of COVID. The Oregon Battle of the Books will be happening in some form, and hopefully we'll have more information about that in February. So I'm going to kind of go down this list, but I'm also going to have people chime in with some updates on some of these things as we go down the list, just so that we can hear what's happening on those. It'll keep me organized, and then you'll know where we are too. So Brianna is our secretary, but she also coordinates our dine outs. So Brianna, do you want to give a little update on dine outs since we're here?
Sure. Yeah. Hi. Thank you. We've had already 2 dine outs in September, and they were successful. Thank you all for everybody who participated. We don't yet have one scheduled for October, but we just booked one for November 10th with Next Level Burger on Hawthorne. And then we have one in December 15th, which will be Porque No on Hawthorne as well. So have some more coming up. It's been a great way to help with the PTA getting funds for support, especially at a time when we can't do a lot of fundraising. So yeah, thank you all for helping to participate in those.
Yes, yeah. So all the dine out money does go to the PTA budget. Okay, and then Elizabeth McPherson is our treasurer, and she'll be talking a little bit later about our budget. Kathy Kershaw is our communications coordinator. Kathy, are you on here? Let me see everybody.
I am.
Okay.
Let me start right. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Kershaw. Before I have a little update about the t-shirts, but Brianna, can you talk about, do you have the final numbers from the dine outs that we've done?
I only have the one from, let me, sorry, I didn't have that up. We have not received the one yet from the Nicolas, but the one from Atlas Pizza is raised $682.
That is amazing. That is so cool. That is a lot of money. I mean, usually we hit, I think, around like 300. So good job. That was really successful.
Sorry, guys.
So again, my name's Kathy Kershaw. I do communications, which means Constella updates and Facebook updates and Instagram and event notifications and things like that. If anybody would like to help with or has a passion or a knack for any graphic design work, please email me. I would love some help, because there's always, communications coming out. So it would be great to get, a little team of people to help. I mean, if you love social media and that's your jam, that could be you. So this will be my last year doing this. So I would love to sort of hand the reins over to somebody who would be comfortable doing that. So.
Thanks, Kathy.
Sure.
Okay, great. And then Erica Keeley's our garden club coordinator. Erica, do you want to give a little update about the garden?
Sure, thanks. So yeah, the garden, we have our newly redesigned garden that's up and it's been planted all summer. And generally what we do through the year is we coordinate the garden part of the cleanup at the beginning of the school year as part of Community Care Day. And then at this part of the year, we're kind of looking at grant funding ideas for helping to fund the Grow Portland program that we have at the school. In the spring, in the past, we've had a native plant sale. I do have some hopes that we'll be able to do that this year, but we're going to just have to wait and see where things are. And that's a springtime event. We also do a big garden cleanup in the spring every year, if we can make that happen or not. But yeah, similar to Kathy, I've got a third grader and a middle schooler, so I would, love to have some help. I've got Mary, who's I think on this call today, but it would be nice to have everyone who's interested in the garden and keeping that program going and funded to come join us. And you can join us on the Constella thing, or you can reach out to me directly if you would like. I do hear through the grapevine that we haven't yet had garden. So I'm hoping maybe Denise can speak to that a little bit during the Q&A today. I don't think the garden classes have happened yet. So maybe we can get an update during that, but thank you.
Great, Erica. Thanks. All right, Christine Pitts is our IDEA Committee Chair. Christine, you want to give a little shout out about IDEA Committee?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm not turning my camera on, but I am here. I first just want to say thanks to everyone who served on the Grout IDEA committee last year. It was the first year that I think we had an equity focused committee as a school. And sorry, my dad is blowing me up right now. Anyway, we were really pulled together as a community after the murder of George Floyd, and just the committee's work last year was really developmental and emergent. We didn't have a lot of public facing events, but started to define, how we can be as parents more leaders in centering racial equity around Grout. So it's similar this year, really trying to figure out the best ways to support, the PTA as well as staff in moving that work forward. And we're looking for a co-chair to help me out. Hopefully someone of color or a multilingual family member or parent would be fantastic. Julie also started a lot of amazing things last year on the IDEA committee. And I would really like to find just one of those things or two of those things that we can center our efforts on. I haven't scheduled any meetings yet, but I will get that on calendar soon. And if you're interested, I'll drop my phone number in the chat. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. Thanks, Christina. Yeah, and we will also put the meetings on Constella so that people will know when they can go to those as well. Great. Okay, so Trina is our fundraising coordinator this year. We, because of COVID, probably won't be able to do an auction. There've always been kind of mixed feelings about the auction anyway. And so Trina will be working around trying to figure out how we will fundraise for PTA. So if anyone's interested in that, we haven't quite nailed down what that's going to look like yet, but I'm sure that she would love to have help if anyone's interested. Ryan Phillips is our movie nights coordinator. Again, an event that we can't do at this time, but they're totally on board for when we're ready to do that. Sharice Jewell is our teacher representative and teacher appreciation coordinator. So we love having her because she tells us what's possible and not when it comes to teacher time. And then Kim Robinson is our previous treasurer, and she has a position on the board to just help make sure that we have continuity. So that's the board. We do have open positions for things that we aren't doing right now, like Fall Festival for next year. Yeah, Sharice, what do you want to?
Hi, is it okay if I talk about
Yeah,
the
totally.
teacher contest real quick? Okay.
Yeah.
Since we aren't having volunteers in the school right now, I'm going to run the teacher contest from within. So all the paperwork went out to teachers yesterday, and teachers are deciding whether or not it goes home to be worked on or if they're going to do it within their classroom. I think some of the older grades might have that flexibility to take it home, knowing that it's going to come back. Our fabulous art teacher, Mrs. Meyer, went and made this amazing video of how to design. And I just cannot say enough about what she's done to help us with that. So my class watched it a couple times today and came up with some fabulous ideas. So teachers are really into it. And I just really appreciate all of you for the opportunity for the kids to design this. This is just so amazing, and it's bringing everybody together. So thank you so much. And I'll keep you updated on how that's going.
Awesome. Thanks, Teacher Sharice. We appreciate you. So there are still other positions that are available that might not be happening right this minute. And then also everyone in every position is always happy to have help. So if you see something on this list that you're interested in, that's great. We also like having kind of a co-person to learn so that if the next year they want to take over the role, then they can do that easily. Let me go to the next slide, which should say, so if you want to get involved, you can connect through constella.com. You can email us at groutpta@gmail.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. And so PTA membership, it is a thing where you pay $10 to be a member. And what that gives you is voting rights for when we have like our budget that we vote on and things like that. Grout PTA doesn't actually keep the majority of that money. The majority of that money does go to the state and national levels. And they do a lot of advocacy for students and PTAs. So if you do want to become a member, you can go to grout.memberhub.com/store and do your membership through there. And if you have any questions, like I said, groutpta@gmail.com is a great way to connect. Any questions? It's $10 for PTA membership, and anyone can do that. You don't have to be a parent. You can be just a community member. Grandparents can do it. You know, aunts, uncles, whoever, guardians. Yes, it's $10 for the year. There's also a way for you to pay for the credit card processing fee, which I think is 85 cents. So it's really like $10.85 if you want to do the processing fee for us. Because otherwise, then we're like negative 35 cents. Okay, great. So the last thing we need to talk about real quick before I give the floor to Denise is that we do have to approve our budget this year for the PTA. This budget was approved in June, minus these 2 changes that you see on the screen here. And I did send the budget out through Constella. It's also available. I don't think you can click on that link, but I will.
I can drop it in the chat. I managed
sure.
to get my computer functioning.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I will pull it up though, but the only 2 changes that we made from the end of last year was we added an allowance. We have allowances for all the teachers. It's kind of a small grant that they can use for whatever they need in the classrooms. So we added one for the music teacher when they're on board. And also we're gonna let them know that if they needed some like startup costs beyond the $200 that they could definitely get a hold of us for that. And then we increased our t-shirt budget. Normally we only buy t-shirts for kindergartners and new students, but we missed last year's kindergartners. And with all the COVID stuff happening, we just want everyone to feel really connected in the Grout community. So we're buying new t-shirts for all students. So that's why we increased our budget for that. And then I'm going to stop sharing so I can pull up the budget in case anyone has questions about that. Oops. So were there any questions about the budgets? We haven't taken the auction out just because we haven't gotten around to it. All of our other events that we aren't going to be doing had already been netted out to 0. So you can see like our income and our expenses net out to 0. We had already done that. We did that last year because we weren't sure if we'd be able to do those events. So yes, Denise, do you have a question? No, okay. Anyone has a question, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask or raise your hand. Okay, so how it'll work is I'll send out an email with a Google form attached to all of the members of the PTA from last year, just because we haven't really started membership yet. And I'll just ask you if you approve or disapprove the budget. And then that's how we do that. Okay, so I think we are moving on to Miss Denise here, and let me pull up your
Thank you.
presentation. There were a lot of questions. I really am so happy with how much participation we had with parents sending in questions because there were a lot of them, but that's really good because then we can get all the info out. So
it's really great. And I'm going to go fairly quickly because it is 7:30 and I don't think some of these individual questions I could talk about for half an hour. So first, let me start with saying thank you for letting me join your meeting. I'm happy to be here and talk about what's happening at Grout. It has been a super busy couple of weeks. We are, launching a regular school year, which is something to celebrate. At the same time, we're implementing whole new procedures around health and safety protocols that we've never seen or experienced before. So it's been, I think I can say for our staff, it's been exhilarating and exhausting and pretty powerful. I mean, I've had a lot of big emotions as we started this year, and I appreciate all of the people. The staff has been phenomenal to work with. I know that doesn't surprise any of you, but they have been great in supporting what we need to do to support our families. They have stepped up every single time we have needed an extra hand. And so that's been super appreciated. And the community too, giving feedback when things aren't working, being flexible and forgiving when we have our missteps, and understanding that we're all kind of working through this at the same time together. So I appreciate being here and having this role, and it's definitely not what I expected my second year of being a principal or my first year in the building, however you want to look at it. It's definitely been a wild ride. But I want to start with, there was a lot of questions, and a couple of categories. Kathy grouped the questions together, and I mostly took them straight out of how you grouped them, Kathy. But in a couple of areas, I started with just some general information because I thought that would help. I think the COVID protocols is a big kind of area of question. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the process and how it works, and then I can get into the individual questions. And sometimes that's going to answer the questions. Right now, what we're working with, kind of how a process starts for a student who might not be feeling well. So our staff works with what we call our symptom tracker. If your child is sick, you're going to call in and let us know. And you're probably going to get some probing questions about what symptoms they are experiencing. Pretty much any illness symptom is going to get recorded in our symptom tracker. And that goes to our nurse, our school health assistant, and our nurse, who takes a look at that and kind of decides where they need to follow up. If it's something that might cause us some questions about a potential exposure or a close contact outside of school, the nurse follows up with this parent. And sometimes I can follow up with the parent. So we work kind of as a team. I try to let her do that role, but she's really busy. Our nurse is covering 4 schools. She's with us 1 day a week. She was here all day today. And she's been working really late into the evenings to keep updated on all of our symptoms. So what happens, we follow up with the symptom tracker to get more information from families, and where warranted, where we think we might have a student close contact for COVID, I will fill out what we call a SCIF, a student or staff COVID information form. And that's basically notifying the MESD team that we have a potential exposure to a COVID case. That could be a student at home with a family member, so a student with a close contact. It could also be a case in our building, and that's followed up with by myself or the nurse. We are the only ones that will be doing the SCIF forms. I wanted to kind of explain what an exposed close contact is, and we have a lot of protocols that we're following, and this is one of the sheets that we're using for kind of to guide the process and how what the steps are in our contact tracing. But a close contact for school purposes, so when we're at school, close contact is 3 to 6 feet. Within 3 to 6 feet. If it's not a close contact, if the students are within 3 to 6 feet and are adequately wearing their masks. If it is under 3 feet, or if it's within 3 to 6 feet and we feel like they're not properly wearing their masks and they have more than 15 minutes. So there's also that 15-minute marker. It's not a close contact if they walk past somebody in the hallway. It's not a close contact if they're playing together at recess and they bump into each other and then run apart. So we have the 15 minutes, we have the 3 to 6 feet question, and we have the mask question. So when we talk about a potential exposure, those are the considerations that we're talking about. I think that's just important to understand because it can get kind of confusing. And maybe a little overwhelming when we think about 350 students and 60 staff members, and how do we keep track of all that? We have our symptom space where students who may be experiencing symptoms they sit with our school health assistant in isolation until parents can come pick them up. We do have a diagnostic Binax Now testing for symptomatic students or staff that are already on site. And there's a question about that, so I'll come back to it a little bit. But if there's somebody that's exhibiting symptoms and we already have parent permission, we do have a diagnostic test that we can provide. It's a short 15-minute test. You should have gotten information about the OHSU weekly screener. That should be starting up soon, possibly next week. We're entering those in batches as we get them. So if you're interested in opting into the screening assessment through OHSU, what will happen is on Wednesday, we'll send home I haven't seen it yet, but a way to take a saliva sample. There's directions on how to do it. You'll get up the next morning and have your child go through that process of providing their saliva into a test tube. I'm not really sure because I haven't seen what it looks like. And then you'll have them bring that to school on Thursday morning. Thursday morning, we will be collecting all of those and OHSU will be picking them up during that day. So, and then the test results the testing happens and you're sent the results. So that's kind of the general gist of how that weekly screening assessment's going to work. A couple of other protocol things: classroom social distancing. We are operating under an educational exception of students being 3 feet apart with masks on in their classrooms. All of my teachers are reporting that they're able to meet that requirement. I think they're also reporting that some of the students are still struggling a little bit with staying apart from each other. So we're still really trying to encourage that distancing. It's really hard for our students. I would say all of them, especially our youngers, when they're so excited to be with their friends, to tell them that they can't play together or be together. So we're still working on that social distancing, but that's what's happening. And then for lunch and breakfast, we still are operating. There was a 6-week outdoor eating plan. Just to kind of clarify, that's not a hard 6-week stop. What the district really intended for us to do is that we prefer, it is a safer environment when students can be outside with their masks off to eat. So we will continue to do that as long as it's appropriate weather-wise. So we have an indoor plan that we actually implemented this week in our building, and both outdoor and indoor plans require 6 feet distancing. So we just shifted our outdoor plan, which was 3 weeks to 3 feet to 6 feet. And we also created our indoor plan, which is 6 feet. And I can go a little bit more detail about that. Indoor, we are not able to use our cafeteria tables. With the 6 feet distancing, I could really only put 2 children at one of our cafeteria tables. So we're continuing to use our stools inside. We bought a lot of those little step stools. The students can sit on them with their food in their lap, or they can sit on the ground with their food on the stool, kind of like a little table, whichever their preference is. And so we're using those both outdoor and indoors, and those are getting clean after we eat. So that's kind of the process for our breakfast or lunch. Breakfast is similar. We're not doing, some of the, we don't have as many kiddos on the setup. We don't have quite as much time to set up breakfast outside, but we are providing breakfast outside and inside when the weather is necessary. So that's kind of the basics of our protocols and testing. Some of the specific questions, and if you'll go to the next slide, and thank you, Antonia. This first question is talking about handing out COVID tests to families to have on hand. I don't have any, I haven't had any indication that that's going to be made available to our families. As you probably know, our guidelines shift on an ongoing basis, and we've had a lot of changes happen. And we're getting updated guidance frequently. So that could change, but as of right now, we don't have any plans in place to send COVID tests out to families to keep on hand as needed. And I gave that the update on the OHSU PPS screening. So that's, if you didn't get that information, please reach out, check your child's backpack, reach out to the teacher or the office, and we can get you another copy. The next question is really asking about how to help families get COVID testing when it's necessary. And the suggestion here is to have, because it can be a challenge for some of our families, so this question is suggesting that we provide testing for symptomatic children here at school. So having a child who may be symptomatic come to school to get that testing. The concern with that is we want to keep positive cases not at school, away from school. So I would be very concerned in that scenario about having a symptomatic person or child coming to the school and being around some of our students or staff who are not symptomatic or who are healthy. Obviously, we want to limit any contact that we have with a positive COVID or a presumptive COVID case. But instead of having it be done at the school, I do want to offer that we have our nurse, Shannon, our school health assistant, Sky, who are very skilled and have a lot of information about where people can go for testing. I was talking to Shannon today, and she mentioned a COVID testing site that has really quick in and out access that she could refer people to. We also have, our counselor and social worker who provide a lot of help on things like that. And, obviously Katie and I, if there's a family that's in need, could help do some research to find the right spot for families to get to for that. So I think that would be a better option for our families and making sure that we can keep everyone safe.
Quick question from the.
I don't know if you want to take questions from the chat now or later. There was just one question that came in the chat.
Yeah, I was gonna do it now just because it's related to what she's talking about.
Right.
So it's just so OHSU testing is just for asymptomatic kids at this.
I mean, it's yes. It's just a screening. So it's yes. You would just do it all the time, every week. I suppose if you were symptomatic, well, we wouldn't want you to bring it to school and drop it off. So it really is for asymptomatic. It's designed to screen so that if your child has COVID, but they're not showing symptoms. So I think that would be true. So some of these questions are about our eating protocols. I just kind of explained the eating for the cold weather. What we identified our cafeteria, our gymnasium, and our main the hallway on the east side of the building for our spaces to eat. We've moved PE into another location for a couple of classes and are using those 3 main spaces to house our 6-foot distance for eating, our indoor eating. We now have an indoor recess and an indoor lunch. So we have a whole bunch of different scenarios that are happening with our recess and lunches. We still do want to get kiddos outside for recess as much as possible. So we're still planning to have them go out, even if it's sprinkling a little. So definitely send them with a coat. For lunch, we're going to be more conservative. We're calling that in the morning just because the setup requires us to do that. So I expect, if the weather's even remotely questionable or when it starts to get really cold, we're just going to be eating indoors. So that's kind of how the plan is working. It worked pretty well, I think, for the first couple of days this week, having it be indoors. Somebody is asking about the change from the 3 feet to the 6 feet and why that happened. I quite frankly haven't been able to follow where the guidance changes happen or why, or who's making those decisions. The district is working with a team of health experts to create that guidance. I kind of think the distance change was suggested by Multnomah County, but I think the important piece here is to know is that we're following the guidance that's recommended by the team put together from the district. And they tell me to do it and I try to make it happen as fast as possible. There has been a lot of questions about tents and outside eating. There's been approval for tents, but there's several problems with that. One, there's really no tents to be procured. Tents aren't really readily available, and they have to be installed by and set up by experts in the field. There's a lot of restrictions around how many kids can fit under the tent, like a regular 10 by 10. I think they said a regular 10 by 10 tent, we could get like 3 or 4 kids under. And there's rules about how many tents you can put together. We would have to get big, huge tents. And I think we have, with our covered area, we are not going to be a priority site to have tents. So it's really simply not feasible for us to go with the tent route. And I think we have a good, solid indoor weather plan for eating. And if we decided that we needed to stay outside, we do have our covered area that we could utilize. Somebody else was asking about sitting by the dumpsters. We are having the outdoor eating plan is kind of that alleyway behind the school. We do have dumpsters on one end. There was a couple of those really hot days. It was not a great place to sit. I will acknowledge that. We've changed with the 6 feet. I think there's still a couple of kiddos I noticed that I'd like to move away from that, but we have mostly moved kids at least about 10 feet away, 8 feet away from the big ones. And they're not the ones that's smelling. It's a little one. And there's not kids sitting by the little dumpster. The last question is a great question. It's about the protocol for learning while quarantined. The district has provided a website, and I can put the link. Maybe I can put the link in for enrichment and or lessons if you're in quarantine. So that's what our teachers and us have elected to do, to follow the district provided. I have to find it really quickly. I, of course, had it, and now there's more links that I opened. Or I've closed them. I'll have to get it here in just a second. The lessons, there are lessons that are provided by the district that fit with the district curriculum scope and sequence. So that's really the best option for students who are in quarantine. For our K2 students who may not have a device at home, we can make arrangements to get a device to them, like we did last year during our hybrid or when we were in CDL. So we can make those same arrangements to get devices to students while they're needed for quarantine. And then they would access the lessons via the district website to complete. It's really not feasible for teachers to try to teach both with the seesaw and the amount of individualizing that those lessons require, and do their regular in-person teaching. It's really two jobs. So this is the best option for our students who are in quarantine, and it aligns with the curriculum.
Denise, someone just asked, can't the covered areas be used for outdoor lunch recess? I think you did answer that by saying you guys are using it right now, but I assume it's not big enough for all the students.
We're using the covered area down below for recess.
Okay.
So when we have indoor lunch, indoor recess, indoor, we're eating inside, and then we have half the students go outside for recess and play under the covered area. I think our staff feels we really try to get students out and moving around when at all possible for recess. So I think if I had to switch that and do lunch outside and have everybody do recess inside, we would have a lot of squirrely students and probably some squirrely teachers. Was there another question, Antonia?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
Someone did ask if if one of the kids had COVID a few months ago, if it would show up on the tests, but
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure those are antigen tests and it would only show a current infection.
I don't know the answer to that. I would have to ask Shannon.
Mhm.
I try to stay in my lane on some of this. We're really crossing over into a lot of health considerations that I don't feel, I don't want to be the one making some of those answers or creating some of that. The next kind of group of questions was around our communication plan. So what I thought I would start with is what are we doing? And I know we haven't seen all of these things happen yet. This is our communication plan. And this isn't like all inclusive as we recognize new ways to communicate. I thought of one as the meeting was, as we were getting ready for the meeting that I didn't include. But mostly this is what the plan is and how we communicate with our families. And this is pretty similar to what I believe has been done in the past, at least that I'm familiar with. We started the year with a welcome back letter and followed that by a COVID protocol letter that came out just before school started. And I recognize that was frustrating for some of our families because it was later than they wanted. And I understand that concern. I also had to balance it against the changing protocols. Some of those literally changed right before the letters went out. And had I sent them earlier, I would have had to backtrack. And I find oftentimes when I'm communicating with our families, when bad information has gone out, it's a lot harder to backtrack out of it to correct misinformation. So my apologies for families that was a problem for. I know that it could have been more timely, but I appreciate everybody's understanding as we worked through those, last minute, how are we going to do these things? We will be doing a Grout newsletter every other week. This week, you should get it on Friday. We are thinking about moving it to earlier in the week, but right now, Friday is when to expect those. And I think that matches when they used to be sent out. We will also be sending out a monthly calendar. I believe those went home today for October. So it just kind of gives you a hard copy of the events that are coming up at Grout. classroom newsletters are going home from our teachers. Most of the teachers are copying me on those, so it's fun to see and read about what's happening in the classrooms. Believe those are generally happening weekly. We might have some teachers that are doing those every other week. We also had back to school night last week. Planning to start monthly principals chat in October, like we have done in the past. Last year, we started those, I believe, in October. Participation dwindled in the spring. So, you know, we'll see if that is still something that people want to have. We have conferences in November. We will be updating the website. It needs kind of a little bit of an overhaul to get updated. That's important and it's on our to-do list, but we have some other more urgent matters that we'll probably be taking care of first. So I would expect the website to be a little bit to be updated towards the middle of October, middle to end of October. And then we're using School Messenger to send out reminders and short notice messages. So when we like just kind of little reminders, they're very short. I think our character limit there is 160. So sometimes they seem a little brief, but just kind of to give you those right in the now moment messages. So that's the communication plan that we have in place, you know, and I'm certainly open to feedback about what would work best for, you know, our community. And if people have suggestions for changes, I'm definitely open to hearing what those ideas are.
And Denise, by updated website, you mean Grout's website, PPS Grout website?
Yeah, PPS Grout website. Some of the questions, so this first question really has a lot to do with instruction, and it's that idea that you know, parents were really involved during CDL with their child's learning on a daily basis and really had a view into the classroom that they've never had before and wanting to know how we're going to recreate that. So I'm going to come back to this as we talk about instruction later. The next two questions are around improving communications. And I think the last question has to do with the goals that Katie and I had developed. And those are actually from last year, and we carried them over because we felt like they were still really pertinent this year. So I think kind of I answered those questions around how are we going to communicate. And that that's what I know for now. Again, I'm open to feedback if there's ideas for improvement. Oh, sorry. I was trying to do something and I lost. Okay, parent volunteering. So the short answer here, and I can read all of these questions. The short answer here is we don't have we don't have volunteers in the classroom, student-facing volunteers right now. The district has not, that they're allowing parents in the building, but not in classrooms to support instruction as student to student or to students. You can come into the building by appointment if you're in the building for less than 15 minutes. So we're kind of working with parents who do need in the building, but for the most part, we don't have a way to track if parents are vaccinated and who's able to volunteer in the classroom. The district may change that. I don't have, that is something the district has been pretty clear about. In my area, senior director and I have had multiple conversations around how to keep our students safe with contractors, with volunteering, with other people being in our building. And it's just, we have to be so careful with our children and who they come in contact with. So anytime an adult comes into the building, we are, you know, signing them in and out in the office and keeping track of where they go in the building if we need to do contact tracing. So for right now, there's no volunteers in classrooms. I don't have any notion to when that might change. and what the district's protocol will be for that. So the only volunteering that's happening in any schools in PPS is what they're calling essential volunteers. And that's for volunteering that's not in classrooms. So it might be doing something outside of a classroom, and we haven't identified a need for that in our building.
Denise, real quick, someone is saying that they've gotten an email to previous volunteers saying if you provide your vaccination status, you can possibly volunteer. Was that just the general PPS system? What kind of
That could be, I don't know. There's a lot of information that comes out. I'm assuming that came from the district, and I'm assuming it might have been in relation to that idea of essential volunteers. My understanding is still that it is not for volunteering in classrooms. So I don't, again, I don't know the mechanism for how to, I know they're doing some background checks for some other schools who have identified volunteering that isn't in classrooms. And so that could be what that's referring to. All right, it's 8 o'clock. And this is the nitty gritty that I love to talk about. So I'm going to be as brief as I can in answering these questions. I know there's still quite a few questions, and I'm sure all of our families would love for us to get back to them. I still have several things to do here at school before I leave. So I'm going to try to be brief and take note of these topics for future principal chats. Small group learning is happening. The first question is, how do we do small group learning to meet students at their learning level? And that's been a little bit of a challenge for our teachers because of the distancing rules around school. So our teachers are being creative about how they work with students in small groups. The teams are working together to identify which students need that support. We also have our student support specialist and our 2 EAs who are mostly, it's been our student support specialist to this point. They've been doing our assessments for our K2 students to identify who needs those, who needs what additional supports. Second and third through fifth, we'll be doing what we call MAP growth assessments coming up in the next few weeks to also get more information about where students are at with their levels. Teachers have also been doing their traditional assessments. That's typically what we do in September. So that's how we identify what the learning levels are. We have our student support specialists working with small groups to provide specific and targeted interventions based on what those students need. And she's doing that in reading right now. We would like to start offering something like that in math. And we also have Laura and Anne who are doing a lot right now and helping us with our health and safety protocols around lunch. But the intention is for them to also be able to start adding groups to their day. So that's kind of what the plan is, providing the tier 2 and tier 3 intervention supports with the student support specialist and EAs, and then inside the classroom with differentiation by the teacher. And again, that looks a little bit different in every class. So I would check with your teacher if you want really specific information around how the teacher is providing that. They're working really with their PLC partners to make the decisions about what that looks like. So fourth grade has been an area of concern. Our fourth grade classes are about 32 students each. That's a pretty big class. It's not quite to the level where we will get an additional teacher. So for Title I schools, which we are, Our staffing ratio is for 4th and 5th grade is at 34 to 1. So we would have to have 35 students in each classroom to get an additional teacher. And to be fair and honest, that number goes up if you're not a Title I school. So for non-Title I schools, that number's 35. So those schools have to have 36 students to get that additional teacher. This is a pretty common question around staffing and around how we address class sizes as a district. I don't have a lot of flexibility I can't make universal changes to that staffing ratio. What I can tell you is I'm 100% confident in our 4th grade team. I pat myself on the back for putting Mr. Mao and Mr. Solitaria together to work as a PLC and coordinate their teaching and instruction together. They are excellent teachers, and I have a lot of confidence in their ability to provide instruction. It might, it's a little bit, counterintuitive, but a lot of research says that class size is not necessarily one of the biggest impacts on student growth over the year. And so there's a lot of other strategies that we implement to address student growth. And class size is one of them, but it is not even in the top 50%. Like, it's about halfway down the list of what's an effective practice to support instruction. And I know that seems counterintuitive, and sometimes those big meta analysis studies that say that people can challenge those results, but that's what research says. We do really focus in on providing direct feedback, having our teachers collaborate and work together to make sure their targeted instruction, that their assessments are on point with what they're trying to teach, so they can modify and adjust their instruction based on what those assessments are telling them, and the feedback that they're giving their students. And those are the most important and impactful ways that we can have growth and learning in our classrooms.
Denise, someone raised their hand with a question, if that's okay. Right
Sure.
now.
Hey, Denise, this is Ryan Phillips. Really appreciate you being here and spending the time to answer these questions. Just one observation and then a question. So I'm sure your assessment of that research is accurate. I just want to call out, though, that all that quantitative research would be on average treatment effect. And so there's always variation around the mean. So that might be the mean average effect, and that's true, but it doesn't capture variation between courses, right? So, so that doesn't necessarily speak to the particular circumstance of what we're looking at. But setting that aside, the one thing I wanted to say is I at least one of your 4th grade teachers doesn't share your optimism about the size of the classroom and its effect on the ability for students to learn. And in particular, I think combined with some challenging, student readjustment, both collectively and then maybe particular individuals within the classroom at the same time. And while I absolutely, I'm sure that as a principal, you don't have the authority to hire new teachers at your own budgetary whims. I guess there's still a concern here that the question is like, there's two, I think, because one is that, like, given the circumstances and the limitations that are set by the district, what can be done? Because 32, I don't think any teacher is, I can't imagine any, as a teacher, as a former teacher myself, actually, but plus as a parent, that number still seems very high. But the other thing is, I think, is given the circumstances, like given that can't add teachers, what can be done? Because I having spoken with at least one of those teachers, they do have real concerns about how effective they can be as a teacher, given the numbers and the dynamics in the classroom.
Yeah, and I think, Ryan, we're going to have we are going to schedule a meeting, if I'm correct. I'm happy to meet with any parents that want to talk about this on an individually. I have to be super careful here when we start talking about individual teachers. And Ryan, I appreciate your confidentiality there. I met with both teachers last week, and I know there's some, I think we all have those days where we have frustrations and it feels like we're not that things are a little bit worse or more dire than they are. So that I would encourage you to talk with the teachers again, because that's not what was communicated to me. And maybe because of our relationships that, they're trying to say what will make me happy, but we've had 32 fourth graders in a class, and one of these teachers has already taught in that scenario in the past. So it's, to be quite honest, we have a lot of schools across PPS and across the state of Oregon that have 32 students in a classroom. And I will not try to pretend that it's an ideal circumstance. What I think we can do about it is really focus in on our instruction and how we're developing our lessons, how we're implementing those in the classroom, how we're supporting the tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. I can't speak to the staffing from the district. I don't, like you said, I don't have the power to change that staffing. And a small shift of even one student greatly impacts this PPS's budget. That process all happens in the spring. We start talking about staffing in February. So
Denise, there's a question also that might address exactly what you're talking about. There's a question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
That
I'm
think
not great
goes
about
right in.
reading the chat while I'm trying to.
That's okay. Just the question is, how can a music teacher be added but not another fourth grade teacher?
Because those are two separate staffing decisions. I can go move on to the update about the music teacher. We were added a music teacher as a part of the K-12 arts pathways as a Title I school. All the Title I schools in the Cleveland cluster, I think there was another cluster that also received specific funding for a music teacher. When we get funding like that, I don't have the ability to just reallocate it to a different space or a different purpose. I get very specific allocations, and even to the extent that it tells me which grade level that the teachers are at. So I don't even have the flexibility to flex like a blend if I want to combine, these grade levels, these two over here to make a third. So these are, it's based on the staffing ratio. It's based on the district's all the considerations that they put into the budget, all the considerations they put into having equitable, comparable class sizes across the district. So the music teacher funding is a completely separate pot of money. And that was identified as a priority with the board to have the K-12 visual and performing arts pathways. So what they were trying to do is create opportunities for students who are feeding into certain high schools to have a common arts experience into high school. So they don't want a dance program, for example, to not have any dance classes leading into it. So for us, that means they want our students to have music leading into the middle school, leading into the high school, so they have a K-12 experience. So that's why we have a position for a halftime music teacher and not for a fourth grade teacher.
Denise knows I like to do a time check too. I can't remember how many slides we have next. So I don't know how many people I've met on here without masks, but I'm Katie Votter, the assistant principal. I'm often our timekeeper.
She is the timekeeper. There was a question on the last slide I think I didn't answer.
Yeah, sorry, I'm
And I
checking
just
for that.
wanted to say, when it comes to individual grade levels, and I know you mentioned, Denise, that meeting at on a separate time, and I appreciate, I think it's Holly put a link in there to address the more broad concerns, more on a district level. So
No, I didn't see
that,
that.
yeah.
The last question here is about transparency into what's happening in the classroom. So I think one of the benefits of doing distance learning and hybrid was you guys got to participate or be in the lessons as the teachers were doing them. And so having to step back away from that is very, like, it feels a lot different. What I would say to that concern is what we did before COVID, before CDL, is the teachers, and I know our teachers do their newsletters, and there's a lot of information about what the learning that's happening in the classroom is. Hopefully you got some of that information at back to school night. You can get more of it at conference time. The other piece is our teachers are following the district provided curriculum, and again, somehow when I switched over to the meeting, I kind of lost some links. So I'll see if I can find them at the end of the meeting and put them in the chat. But if you go into the PPS website, and I'll add this to our newsletter for this week. If you go into the PPS website, you can see the scope and sequence of what the lessons they're learning, generally speaking, are. So you can get it. The teachers may not be exactly aligned day to day, but they're very close to that scope and sequence that's being provided by the district. So it gives you the opportunity to really look at what is the learning targets for this lesson, and how our teachers, progressing through the material. So that would be probably the best way to find out what the curriculum that the teachers are using looks like. And also reaching out to the teachers and checking in with them about what they're teaching in the classroom. I think it is a little bit of a pullback as we go to in-person instruction. And I don't know of another way for you to really see what's happening in every lesson. I think it's, so Katie, you're answering that question, but there's also an Atlas link in there. So they can look at the parent side of Atlas. Atlas is the software that our teachers use for the lesson planning and the scope and sequence that the district provides.
And also, I was just trying to add that anything in particular, whether it's transportation, COVID protocols, scope and sequence, that little magnifying glass in the upper right-hand corner of pps.net usually pulls up the most recent updated links. I just used it today myself.
I finally found my, so I'm gonna put that in the chat, the link for the Atlas that I was just talking about, to view our district provided scope and sequence lessons. So that is the way for you to find out what's happening in the classroom, one of the ways. I'm also, while I'm here, going to put in the link for the enrichment lessons or quarantine lessons, depending on the purpose that we're using them for. Some families may choose to use those as enrichment to what's happening already. And then finally, I wanted to give you guys the link because I lost it again. I've got too many tabs open. To the back to school, to all of our health and safety protocols. So if you're wondering how something works, there's a Q&A and health protocols. And I meant to mention that earlier. So I'm going to put that in just so that they're all here before we wrap up the last of the questions. All right, class photos. Some of these are going to be quick. Some of these are not, and they're very complex answers. So I'll go through them as quickly as I can. Are we going to have class photos? We had to pause to make sure we could safely do our pictures with following all of our COVID protocols. We scheduled that for October 13th. So you should have gotten, I think I saw the email come through just before the meeting. And I think the packets should be going home soon. They have it all scheduled out so that it comes home in time. I'm gonna skip over, I'm gonna just pull out a couple of the quick questions. Sun programming, you should have got something about that. Was it yesterday when it came home on the same day as the opt-in for the COVID screening? So Chelsea was scrambling. She's been working, trying to make sure she can provide the programming for our kiddos. It's a little bit different with following all the COVID safety protocols this year. So she's working on that, but the programming went home Tuesday, I believe, and is due back on October 6th. So please make sure that you get that in by that deadline to make sure that she has all the information she needs. Site council will be going again. Yes, we'll be recruiting folks. It was a tough sell last year. I think I had one person volunteer. I need to go back into my emails and find that person again. I'd like to start doing the recruiting in October. Fall Fest questions this is complex. We have our health and safety protocols right now. I don't think that we would be able to do a costume parade that would be able to meet our requirements under our COVID protocols with having parents come. The other thing, and I skipped over the equity question and plan to go back, but I think this is an important question for our community, and I have I know it's important that we celebrate, but I also want to be really, really aware when we do a school event that excludes some of our families by the design of the event. And so when we talk about costumes with the Halloween, that is a concern that I have, and I would really like to have a conversation with our community and our teachers around what that means for our families. And so that's going to kind of tie in when I go back to the equity question. And then really quickly, the emergency drills. The district provides us with a monthly checklist of all the drills we need to do. We have done 3 fire drills this month, and today we did our lockdown drill, where we practice having students quiet and in the classroom. Next month is the earthquake drill. So every month there's a different, typically almost every month there's a different drill in addition to our fire drills. Okay, so those are kind of the easy, quick ones. The 2 that I skipped over are about hearing swear words and hurtful name calling that's taking place during school. And the other question was about how to dismantle racism and biases. Those are not short answer questions, but I can take a quick stab at them. I'm going to go broad with the swear words and blatantly hurtful name calling, because really what we're asking here is how are we addressing student behaviors? We have to remember that our students haven't been practicing school behaviors for a year and a half in some cases. So when we come back to school, in even a normal year, we have to teach those school expectations. And so that's what happens over the month of September. So that has been happening in our classrooms as we transition back. Our teachers are working hard to do community building, to come up with classroom agreements to address how we behave in the classroom, what things are acceptable and what things are not. We also will be asking our counselor for certain, I don't think this is a universal across all grades when we talk about swear words, but October is anti-bullying month, and it's a good time for her to get into classrooms and talk about name calling, bullying, hurtful words, and do some whole group lessons for our class. If you have an opportunity to meet our new counselor, she's filling some big shoes with Mr. Frankunis's retirement, but she's phenomenal. I'm super excited about her hire. She's great at building relationships with students. She's got a wealth of experience as a teacher, and she's going to be great. She's already just kind of hit the ground running, working with our teachers. The other pieces to behavior is what we call PBIS, which is a positive reinforcement, to get students to change their behavior, not because they're going to get in trouble, but because there's an incentive in it for them, trying to be positive and give them positive feedback when they make good decisions instead of the negative feedback when they make bad decisions. We're also working with families as necessary. We cannot get into that with other families. So that's one of those sticky areas as we deal with individual circumstances that are happening in classrooms. I can't talk about what's happening for this family over here or what we're doing to support that student. So I can only kind of talk in generalities about what's happening. But one of the things that we do is involve our student intervention team and talk about what are the root causes of some of these behaviors. So how do we change what is it that the student is getting out of that behavior, and how do we change it? So that's a long, short answer to talking about behavior in the classroom. But that's one of those areas I could talk about for a long time. We're definitely
Something, Denise?
Yeah.
And I just am emphasizing that pre-COVID, building community, building protocols, routines is, it takes a good 2 to 3 weeks. And so this is going to take quite a bit longer.
Mhm.
And I think this can also be found on the PPS website, and I'll put it in the chat, is the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. It's my understanding that it is being updated, but I can put that title in the chat, and it shows the behaviors and usually what will happen. But as Denise said, we really like to, at the top is our equity lens, building relationships, and we are not able to share what's happening with another student. So I just wanted to add that we do have a handbook, and we have slowly been sharing it with classrooms, with teachers, and just emphasizing that.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, there's a lot there. If you have concerns about behavior, to definitely check in with the teacher. Katie and I are having ongoing conversations with our teachers around behaviors that they're seeing in the classroom and how we can support them. The last question, and I kind of saved it to me, it's it's the most important question that we could be talking about is what does our equity plan look like, and how are we addressing the racism and biases that have been built into some of our school systems? This is not a Denise and Katie plan. This is a whole staff plan. We had an equity committee that last year met at least monthly. We often met more than that, to guide our equity professional development. And that will be continuing this year. It's definitely something that's important to our staff, and it's important to Katie and I. The actions that we have already taken, and I think it's really important when we talk about an action plan, when we talk about equity in an action plan, our equity work has to be embedded in everything we do. It's not if I do this one activity and then this other activity and then this other activity. It's how we think about what we are doing, how we think about how we are putting our school systems together, and what are our classroom practices look like to support all of our students. So it's not just a couple of things, it's embedded in all of the work that we do, and kind of a constant evaluation against our belief structure. Are we doing what we believe in terms of our equity and racial and social justice work? So last year, our equity team we did professional development throughout the year, but finished the year with 6-week professional development, understanding equity and inequity, that was led by our team. We also had 9 staff members attend a week-long conference after school dismissed about dismantling white supremacy culture in schools. And that's kind of where we're headed with the idea that we have to think about everything that we're doing in terms of this racial equity lens. This year, we are going to be spending time talking about how to change our practices in the classroom. This is one of our super popular books that Katie and I have strong belief in Zaretta Hammond and culturally responsive teaching in the brain. So we are going to be using this as a professional development book study for the whole year. And I expect if we dig deep into it, that we could take 2 years to really dig into the work. But this professional development focuses on our classroom practices and how we develop relationships with kids while also raising expectations for our students. And how do we support our all of our students, including our students of color, to do their very best work in the classroom. What can we do with our parents? And I would love to talk with our PTA about some common joint activities that we can do. You know, one thing that started last year, a little bit the year even before last, was we have a Black student union and an Asian American and Pacific Islander student union. So we have 2 affinity groups that we are supporting. We have some teachers that have really spearheaded those students in those groups. So that is going to continue. And I wonder if that's an area where we might be able to engage as adults in some affinity groups to talk about how schools interface with our different BIPOC communities members. We also, have identified a facilitator for this conversation. We haven't made more steps yet in what that might look like, because we need to put together our full year professional development plan. And I needed to talk to the PTA, but bringing in somebody who can help facilitate those conversations around racism and what it means for our school, I think is another possibility. So those are the action steps that we already have in place. And there's always more to be learned in this area. So that's by no means all of the work that we're going to be doing, but some of it that we've already identified.
Thanks, Denise. Really quick, because we just had one that hopefully will be a little bit easier of a question for you for the last one. Do you know when garden classes will be starting, or what the plan is?
There has been some question in my mind and my area senior director, and I understood the contractors and how we could interface, kind of like volunteering, without having a clear understanding of the vaccination protocols. I think that's getting resolved, and I've asked for clarification. I expect to hear back from the district. I asked the other day, I sent an email, because it sounds like we're going to be able to get started pretty soon. Jamila has been trying to meet with me to set up that schedule. And everybody's very anxious for it to happen, but I just have to make sure that we have our safety protocols in place. So I expect we'll know in the next week or so and be able to get started.
Awesome.
One more thing to the, oh, we're switching.
No, it's okay. Go for it. I'm just moving it over because I have a last
Thank
slide.
you.
So,
I just,
yeah.
I just wanted to add, and I'm keeping it personal and local for myself as a white cis woman, that a lot of it too begins at home and having these conversations at home. And I shared a book with Denise. I can put the, if you hold it up,
Can you see
it's
it?
called This Book is Anti-Racist. Her name is Tiffany. I'll put it in the chat, but it's very, it's an amazing book just to look at as parent, guardian, family. And so when Denise and I were looking at these questions, and I was really thinking about for myself, and as a white mom, that it's all around us as white folks every day in all that we do. So I just wanted to share that piece of it as well.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate Denise and Katie, your input too, and taking all the time for all these questions. I'm sure other people will have more, but you'll have your principal chats. All of this recording, we'll figure out a way to upload it so people can rewatch it if they weren't able to be here tonight, or if they just want to watch it again for fun. And again, here are the ways for you to connect with PTA. If you're interested, we would love to have more involvement for sure. If anyone has any specific questions, I'll stay on for a few more minutes. But thank you all for staying so late. I had a feeling it would go way over, and we honestly did a lot better than I thought. So I think we're.
Thank you, Antonia.
I think
And thank you, Teacher Sharice. Can we give like just at home wherever you are?
Yeah.
You know, you can always send, I've done this with my kids' teachers. You can send, cover your ears, Sharice. You can send Starbucks cards electronically. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Sharice is doing a great job spearheading the t-shirt design contest.
Right on.
PTA can't be in the building, so we're very fortunate to have her for sure.
I'm so happy to help.
Off. Oh, sorry, Sharice. Thank you, everybody. So good to see you all. Say hi when I'm out there in my big bright yellow jacket.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Hello, Max. Hello, Lena. Hi there.
Antonio, I'm sorry I went so far over.
Oh, I had a feeling it happened. It was a lot of questions.
Were really deep questions, some of them. So
Yeah.
and I'm sure that they didn't even get fully answered, but I felt like they needed to be heard, and I wanted to make sure they were, and I wanted to do the best I could. So
Yeah.
thank you for letting me go over. And if there's any follow-up, let me know.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I figured we'd go over, and people, if they wanted to stay in here, they would, and we're recording it so people can watch it later too. So
it's great to have all these videos floating around out there. Now I know how to do YouTube. I learned so much. All right, I have to go do a little bit of work before I leave. So have
Okay.
a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.